Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 298 of the RRBG podcast. This podcast is brought to you by our good friends at Thunderking Coffee. My boy Dean Tompkins is down there in Costa Mesa air roasting some of the most delicious coffee beans. Listen, I'm kind of a coffee nerd. I spend a lot of time putting together our whole system with the Chemex and the slow drip, and it's a lot of work in the morning. So I make sure that the coffee that I'm drinking is actually really good. I've tasted a lot of them from all over the place, and I have to say that Thunderking Coffee makes the best. My favorite one is the positive morning attitude. I go through 2-pound bags like it's nothing. Check them out. Go to thunderkingcoffee.com and pick some up today. This podcast is also brought to you by Killcliff. Killcliff is making some of the cleanest energy drinks in the market. The Ignite has 150 milligrams of caffeine, all natural, none of that BS that poisons your body. They're sugar-free, and they're actually tasty, because I've had a lot of sugar-free energy drinks that I can't stand the taste. They also have some of the best CBD drinks in the market. Check them out. Go to killcliff.com and let them know that the RRBG sent you. And finally, the podcast is brought to you by our longest supporter, Saints Joints. My buddy Lawrence is out there in Washington producing some of the best top quality pre-rolled joints in the market. The packaging is incredible. Every single person I show them, the little packs, they have a little slide out where you have the 5 joints that are pre-rolled inside. The boxes have this incredible artwork on them featuring artists such as Skinner. Every time I go out, people ask me to give them a pack, and thankfully Saints Joints keeps me supplied. So check them out. Go to saintsjoints.com. Support independent businesses. I apologize for the delay for new episodes. It's been over a month. I understand that that's a long time, but I needed to take a little bit of a break. We had some construction here at the studios, and I also needed a little bit of a mental health break for myself personally. But what better person to come back with than the most inspiring person I know, and that's Chris Van Vliet, the man himself. We met up at All Seasons Brewing and talked a little bit about his career. We talked about what inspires him. He gave me some really great advice to inspire me. He talked about stories of meeting people like The Rock or John Cena, being on the red carpet for movie premieres like the new Knives Out movie Glass Onion. We talked a little bit about professional wrestling, as he interviews a lot of pro wrestlers as well. It was a great conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Please make sure to follow him at Chris Van Vliet on all the things. Check out his show, Insight with Chris Van Vliet, and subscribe to his CVV Clips channel on YouTube if you want to see clips of all the interviews that he's done. Down here, click where it says like and subscribe and click the little bell. All those things really help us fight the algorithm. And if you get a chance, support the podcast by checking out patreon.com/RRBG. Cheers. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the RRBG podcast. We are here live at All Seasons Brewing, down the street from my apartment, because my apartment is under construction and I can't record episodes.
This is way better because you've got beer on tap, ready to go.
To be fair, I have beer on tap at home.
You have beer on tap at home?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I work at a brewery, so it's and not only on tap, but I have cases of it just piled up in my house that they're going bad.
If Golden Road sees that you're here, will they be upset?
No, I'm on my own schedule, so it's nice. We
should have done this at Golden Road. We could be drinking mango carts the whole time.
That's true. It's just they're a lot louder. There's a train there that passes by. It's nonsense.
Is spicy mango cart still on the menu?
It is.
That thing gets me every time.
Yeah, I can't drink it. I can't drink it. It's too spicy.
Really?
I'm like this. I'm like the worst brown person you've ever met.
So, mild is too spicy for you?
No, mild is good. Medium is where it gets weird, and I start sweating and stomach aches, and I'm like the dude from Dumb and Dumber. I forget his name. He's got to take the pills.
Yeah.
And he ends up dying from they give him the wrong pills. I forget how that. Yeah, that guy. I actually met him at the Smokehouse in Burbank.
Oh, wow.
He was just there chilling. I was like, you're the bad guy from Dumb and Dumber. Anyway. Anyway, I haven't given you a proper introduction. With me is, I would say, the man that interviews everyone, the man, Mr. CVV, Chris Van Vliet. How are you, brother?
Man, doing great. Thank you for having me on this show for the first time, but our second interview together.
Yes, right. That's right. We did the Comedy Store Wrestling. If you guys haven't been watching my Comedy Store Wrestling show, what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
I know that maybe you're thinking, I don't like pro wrestling. It's not just pro wrestling. We're at the Comedy Store. We're laughing. We're having fun. We're doing improv. So go check that out. Go check out the interview we did.
You know that
Chris.
stuff's fake, though, right?
I know, right? Oh, my goodness. It's so fake. How can you watch that if you watch UFC?
Yeah, I always like to tell people, in Harry Potter, they're not actually flying around in brooms.
Yeah.
Brooms, right?
Yeah, you know those dragons in House of Dragons? Not real.
What?
Not real.
You know, Ross and Rachel weren't actually in a relationship?
No, now you need to stop. Now you need to stop because I got my hopes up recently with that reunion. I saw there was like discussions that they were like, hey.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in a while. There was like a little spark.
Yeah.
Do you think that during that time, even though it is acting and most people are professionals, when you do something that long for 10 seasons, there's got to be some kind of spark that happens there?
Ooh, I don't know, but I think it could also be where it's just like these are your closest friends that you've worked with for so long that I think it becomes more like family.
Yeah.
Same thing with like a show like Seinfeld. I just think it's family.
I don't know. I'm a weirdo. I'm like, I can't. I can't be friends with a woman without developing feelings. It's weird. Unless it's, now that I'm married and I'm not in the hunt.
I was going to say.
No, not anymore. Now it's fine. But like if I were single at that time, there's no stopping me making a move.
Good thing you weren't cast on Friends then.
Yeah, man.
Courtney Cox would have stood no chance.
Yeah, it's just weird. I find it when it used to happen to me at like work. It'd be in an office situation, when I was single, and I'd become friends with a female employee, and then just, months later, we're like just best friends, and my brain just goes, oh, you're best friends. That means you must date.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why it does that, but it is what it is. You just got out of interviewing a bunch of people for Knives Out.
Yeah, so it's the new one, Glass Onion. So I went to the premiere last night, which was so cool. And today I interviewed Janelle Monáe, Edward Norton, Catherine Hahn, and lots of people. It was a great... That movie is so good, by the way. So it's out in theaters as we sit here right now next week. Okay. And then it's on Netflix right before Christmas.
Okay. I liked the first one. The first one was great.
First one was really good. And this isn't even a continuation of that. This is just another story, another whodunit, another murder mystery. And it's good.
There's no recurring characters?
The only recurring character... I believe it's Daniel Craig. He's like the
he's like the guy.
He's the detective.
Yeah.
Benoit.
Something.
Why? Benoit Blanc.
That's interesting. Like, what do they call that when you get the warm ups? Benoit Blanc.
Oh,
bake some.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like
Bucatini.
an Anchorman.
Yeah.
The arsonist had oddly shaped feet.
Exactly.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
Benoit Blanc
Swimmy.
bakes some bucatini. So let me ask you. I want to, tear it down a little bit. Get to the real human that's sitting next to me. Do you find yourself running out of questions, or when it becomes like a press junket for you, like for this Knives Out thing, does it get boring after so many interviews of back to back to back, and you're just kind of asking the same? So, what was it like working with? You know what I mean? Like, does it get to you at any point?
I try to make the interviews different every single time, and I'm trying to ask them questions in a different way every time. So even if it is a similar-ish question that's going to I just want to ask it in a different way so that it evokes a different response. But no, it never gets old, never gets boring. Like, I'm extremely grateful for all of the opportunities. Like, last night I was at the world premiere. Sam Smith sat in front of me at the world premiere. I'm like, hey, it's Sam Smith.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So I'm just grateful for all of those opportunities. And whether it's someone in pro wrestling, which you and I are huge pro wrestling fans, whether it's a musician, which you and I also have that in common, whether it's an actor, a celebrity, a comedian, entrepreneur, whatever it is. Like, I love that everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of get to the heart of what their story is, because I think too often we just see the finished product of like Tom Brady with 7 Super Bowl rings, or an actor holding up the Oscar, and we don't see the stumbles along the way to get there. And I'm just fascinated by that, because I think that if we can start to break it down piece by piece and reverse engineer that, it gives people hope that maybe moved out here to LA and they're struggling at trying to be an actor or a model, or someone who's starting a business and going, man, it's just not clicking. And you realize that people who are insanely successful were doing the same thing. Like Sam Worthington, the guy from Avatar, was sleeping in his car before he got Avatar, and that changed his life, and now the next Avatar is about to come out, and it's going to change his life even more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of the comedians at the Comedy Store are sleeping in their cars too. So.
Yes, but then you hear about, like, I mean, look at the names on the wall.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about LA is I think that there's so many people that make moving to LA the end goal. They move from Illinois or Nebraska or Texas or whatever, and they go, man, I'm going to move to LA one day. I want to be an actor. I want to be a comedian. I'm going to move to LA one day. And the problem is they make LA the end goal, because they get here and they don't realize that this is step one in the journey. That you got to put the work in. But so many people move to LA and go, man, all my friends back home think I've made it. All my friends back home think I'm living it up. And then they don't bother putting in the work, because this was the end goal. I've always wanted to move to LA. Going to move to LA one day. You realize that when you get here, that's when the work needs to begin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been here 6 years now, and it's just not... In the last couple of years is when I've been seeing some of the fruits of my labor starting to happen with the Comedy Store thing, and some of the opportunities have been presented. But yeah, it's a tough gig. It's not for everyone.
And the idea that like you're just going to walk down Hollywood Boulevard and get discovered, or like that a producer's going to see you in a restaurant and go, you're going to be in my next film.
You've got the right look about you.
I mean, I'm sure that those have happened.
Sure.
But those are 1 in a million, if not 1 in 10 million.
Yeah.
It's all about like paying your dues, putting in the time, like audition after audition after audition. In the world of comedy, it's getting those reps in.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm amazed by how many people that call themselves comedians and haven't been on stage in a month.
Yeah, dude, I'm sorry. And I get that question at the store a lot, because I'm there all the time. So they're like, oh, are you a comedian? I'm like, no, nope. Because I'm not going to just throw that out there like that. Have I tried open mics? Sure. Yeah. Am I a comedian? Not at all.
Amateur comedian, perhaps.
Aspiring comedian is the word, yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's a tough racket out here in LA, and it's not, like I said, it's not for everyone. That's why you see so many homeless people here.
Well, it's a tough racket out here in the entertainment world, because, it's so densely populated with really talented people. And like, to borrow a line from the late great Macho Man Randy Savage, the cream rises to the top. Yeah. And that's the thing, like if you were the best actor in Des Moines, you come here, it's the difference between...
You're still the best actor in Des Moines.
But it's the big fish, small pond versus small fish, now big pond. Gigantic pond, ocean here.
Yeah. I mean, I've felt the pressures of that, because I mean, I'm not the only one doing this. Obviously, I'm sitting here with you. You do interviews. I'm just lucky you don't like interviewing metal bands that are obscure black metal bands. That's what I like to do. But I asked you that question earlier of, do you get kind of bored? Because I noticed like some of these interviews are like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you don't get time to break them down, to get into that story of theirs. So, I mean, does those little 5-minute snippets kind of like turn you off at all?
I would say the biggest difference between a 4-minute junket interview or 5-minute junket interview and an hour-long podcast like this is building rapport.
Yeah.
And you've got, in an hour-long interview, you've got the first 5, 10, 20 minutes to build rapport and to really ease into a natural conversation. Whereas in those, it's you have to ask questions. And, you don't have a lot of time to just, waste. So...
And you have to kind of also, I'm assuming, you have to kind of ask certain questions in order to keep getting these interviews given to you as well as the opportunities. Because if you go out there, you have 5 minutes, and you're like, hey, so what's your favorite place to fart while talking to John Cena. I'm sure he'll laugh it off, but like a lot of people will be like, hey, man, you didn't talk about the movie.
Yeah, and I think that there is an expectation that you're at least going to talk about the movie.
Yeah.
Granted, there's a poster behind both of us that, has the name of the film.
Sure.
So, like, there's been times, like, years ago when Henry Cavill was cast as Superman, I was interviewing him for a film called Immortals. And I'm like, well, Henry Cavill, Superman, is sitting in front of me right now, and he hasn't really talked about being cast. I've got to ask him something. So we talk about the film, and then the last question was about him putting on the suit for the first time. And the Immortals logo is behind us as we're saying this. So I think it's win-win for everybody in those situations.
For sure.
But I think you have to approach each interview for the way that the interview is set up. So I remember learning in communication studies, man, this is like way back. I remember Marshall McLuhan saying the medium is the message. So that, like, if something was on radio, that the radio was in fact the message. If something was on TV, that was in fact the message. So I think that you have to look at this of like, the medium here is this a 90-second red carpet interview where you're going to get maybe a question or two? Is this a 4-minute, 5-minute junket interview where you're going to get maybe 4 or 5 questions? Or is this an hour-long podcast conversation? And I would structure my questions to make sure that it fits with each different scenario that's in front of me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. Like, I just, obviously, if I were to get presented with like, hey, you got 5 minutes with The Rock, I'm going to take it. It's obvious.
Yeah, you are.
There's no doubt in my mind I would take it, but obviously I would want to have him for like an hour. You know what I mean?
We all would.
And that's where my internal battle comes with some of these. Like, I get PR people messaging me, emailing me like, hey, you got the singer from Foreigner for 10 minutes, and I'm just kind of like, well, it's a podcast. Yeah. Like, what am I going to do with 10 minutes? I
mean, you could do what I do. I'm putting these junket interviews on my podcast and calling them just mini interviews, mini views, because 10 minutes with someone from Foreigner, or 10 minutes from someone with someone you really want to talk to is better than 0 minutes.
Right. Yeah. I always say yes. Obviously, I'm not. Yeah. I'm just saying my internal battle is like, I don't know what I'm going to do with 10 minutes, but I'll figure it out. I got to say yes. So speaking of saying yes, I've heard a lot of, these motivational speakers and people on TikTok and Instagram Reels that are like, oh, you got to learn when to say no. And that's important. But I mean, I never say no to scenarios. Do you find yourself saying no to people, or do you just say yes to everything? And that's why you're here right now. I'm just kidding.
I really value the time that I spend both professionally and privately, and I've been really good, especially over the last, I'd call it like 2 years, of just prioritizing what's actually really important to me. And I think I used to say yes to everything just so I could be doing everything. I think now I'm at a point where I want to do the things that really fuel me and really drive me. So, and I've always defined success as waking up excited for what you're going to do that day, and then going to bed, proud of what you've done at the end of the day. So for me, I'm okay now, kind of protecting my own energy and going, I don't have the energy to put into that, whatever it is, whether it's an interview, a project, whatever it happens to be. Mm-hmm. I'm okay now saying, I don't think that's the right fit for me.
Yeah. Okay. So what is it is there a specific thing, or do you go based on just the moment, like something's presented and then you feel it out? But like you said, you want to focus on the things that bring you the most joy or, happiness. What is that for you?
It's really where my passion comes from. Like, if I can look at something, and whether it's in an email or someone texted it to me or said it to me, and you get that immediate smile start to creep on your face, I think that's a pretty good telltale sign that you're passionate about that. It also starts for me with like, what's on my calendar right now? And I'm by no means am I that busy, right? Like, I'm just busy doing the things that I enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's just leaning into the things that I love to do, and trying to, when it's someone that's coming on my podcast or my YouTube channel, or when I'm doing an interview like today for some of the TV stations that I work for, TV shows I work for, it's about being able to create something fun and unique in that moment. I think that's what really excites me.
Okay. All right. That's good. Because it's hard to find for a lot of people. I mean, I think that's what college is all about. Is trying to help you find what you want to do, what makes you happy. Is there, aside from interviews or producing, I guess I hate the word content, but producing content for your channel, I mean, is there something else that's like do you want to own a brewery? Do you want to get into acting more, like in movies? Like, is there something else that you think down the road you're going to maybe shift to?
I already own a fishing business.
Ooh.
So I'm very passionate about bass fishing, and I've been fishing in bass tournaments since I was 14 years old.
I hear there's a lot of money in that.
There can be.
I saw a little clip the other day where somebody was talking about $1 million in fishing.
Maybe like lifetime you could make that much, but if you win a BASS Bassmasters tournament, you're winning $100,000, with maybe a few incentives thrown in there. But I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here.
Yeah.
But if you're a really good bass angler, you might win 5 tournaments in your career. So then your sponsors are, covering most of, what your income is. But yeah, I'm super passionate about bass fishing. So my fishing partner and I, Aaron, we started a bass fishing company. We sell tungsten fishing weights. It's called Woo Tungsten. WOO exclamation mark.
I wonder where you got that from.
Well, it's of course the sound you make when you catch a giant bass.
Right.
Woo! Yeah. So, yeah, and then a little tip of the hat to.
Are you not worried you might get a little bit of an email from?
We only spell it with two O's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So does he have a trademark number of
5 O's?
5 O's is his. So like the Woo wings that he has, those are
all 5 O's.
5 O's. Okay,
Yeah.
I never really paid attention to that.
Also, we are Woo Tungsten as one word. That's our trademark.
Oh, okay.
So it's not Woo. It's Woo Tungsten.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, Ric Flair. He was on my show recently, and I was talking with my business partner, and I was like, should we tell him? Should we tell him about Woo Tungsten, or should we not? I don't know. And we went back and forth for a few days. I'm like, I think we should not. I think we should just not tell him about it.
Yeah.
We did.
I think it was probably a good move.
Yeah.
He'd probably be like, well, you're going to be hearing from my people soon.
And his people, like Conrad Thompson would send me a message and be like, I hear you have a company called Woo Tungsten.
Yeah, Rick wants a piece. What are we doing here? We'll put his face on all the tackle boxes and...
we might be onto something here.
Yeah, just get our Ric Flair tackle boxes. Yeah. So that's cool.
I think that's one thing, but I think I just want to continue. I love creating content. It was always my dream growing up to work in broadcasting. And I've been so fortunate to be able to work as a television host for my entire career ever since I graduated from college. So it's doing more of that. I would love to do more acting, and I've been in a few things, and I'm sure I'll continue to every once in a while be in a few things. But it's just, I've seen so many of my friends move out here. It's the conversation we were just having.
Yeah.
And they're struggling. Like, they're struggling to get auditions, and then it's so many, you've got to play the numbers game of so many auditions till you get a yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to play that game.
It's
At
a
least
lot.
not right now.
It's a lot. If you can establish yourself as I don't want to say brand, but just a personality, I guess.
Yeah.
To where they know who they're getting when they bring you in. But I mean, you still got people like, let's say, Bobby Lee or Andrew Santino are still having to do reads and auditions and stuff, even though they are established, names.
But they're at least getting, they're not getting these open calls, right? Like, their agent is going, hey, they're looking for a Bobby Lee type.
Yeah.
Then you go in. Or like Joe Coy, there's a lot of, I think Kevin Hart's at the point now where they're hiring Kevin Hart because he's Kevin Hart.
Sure, yeah.
But I have a lot of people that are sending me emails that have seen what we've been doing on social media and growing those accounts. And I've had a lot of people that are like, how could we do this? Like, how can I do this?
Yeah.
So I've been doing a little bit of consulting and a little bit of coaching. I think I want to lean into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
I've always loved helping people. And if I can take what I've learned in my life and in my career and help somebody else who's maybe at step 1 or 2 on this journey, and I'm at step 4.5 or something, I can show them, what's worked for me, and I think more importantly, what hasn't worked for me. I think that's a really big part of it.
To me, that's the biggest part of it. That's whenever anybody asks me for advice, that's usually, I'm like, well, don't do this.
That's good. Yeah.
Definitely don't do this, because that's what I did, and oops. So, yeah, that's.
I think I may write a book one day.
Yeah?
That's been in the back of my mind for like a year or two. This is an exclusive for you.
Oh, there we go.
I haven't. No, I've been thinking about it. I've been talking about it, and it's just like, I think the only thing in the back of my head is, will people buy it?
Yeah, I mean, well, you got a fan base. Obviously, you've got a lot of people following your channels, and I think people would definitely.
There's people that listen to the podcast and watch the YouTube channel, but would they buy a book?
They'll buy an audiobook for 99 cents on Audible.
I'd do that. Yeah, we'll do an audiobook for sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If it's a book, I mean, obviously your like life story or
It's not about me. Nobody wants to read the Chris Van Vliet
story. That's a little different. But like if you're giving keys to the type of success you've achieved, I'm sure a lot of people. I mean, those self-help books are very big business.
I did a podcast episode a few months ago, solo episode, and I do like 1 or 2 a month, where it's just me talking like straight to the audience, sharing some thoughts that I have. I did one the other day, actually. It was the 3 words that John Cena told me that changed my life. Control the controllable. It was such a big thing. Like, you don't have control about all these things that are happening in your life, but what you do have control over is how you react to everything that's happening in your life. You have full control over that. I did another podcast episode a few months ago where I called it, "What the F are you waiting for?" Like, you want to do all these things. You want to start a podcast. You want to start a comedy career. You want to become an actor. You want to do all these things. And all you've ever done is talked about wanting to do those things.
You got to do it.
What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Like, what are you waiting for? Like, why won't you take that first step? And then once you put that one foot in front of the other, it's that much easier to do it.
Yeah.
And I think there might be something there with the book. Maybe I even call it, "What the F are you waiting for?"
Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of people it might be self-confidence issues, perhaps. That they're like, I'm afraid of failing.
It's a lot of that.
And which you got to fail. If you don't fail, then you don't know that you're succeeding, I don't think. Like I've only gotten to this point because I failed a lot, but you just keep going and keep trying, and that didn't work, let's try this and let's move along and adjust and all that. But yeah, I totally get it, man. I mean, that's how I started this show, is just I want to do it. I've been a guest on a couple pods, I might listen to them all day. What am I waiting for? And boom, what do I need to buy? And you start small too. A lot of people don't start small, and that's another, I think, thing that stops them. They get overwhelmed with what's needed or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I've had, I was fortunate enough to get invited to do a little like speech in front of some students, and they were like, how did you start? And I'm like, I bought a Zoom 1, I think it was a tiny little Zoom.
Yeah.
No video, no nothing, and just plug that in and record with 2 little crappy mics just to get something in the books. And then eventually you start building and okay, maybe I'll use my camera, maybe I'll get some lights. But people want to jump in head first with all of that.
Yeah.
And it becomes intimidating or overwhelming, you know what I mean? Just start and then adjust, I think.
Yeah, look, you don't need to buy any equipment, really, if you just want to test the waters. And I think, to be honest, your first handful of episodes are going to suck.
They're definitely going to suck.
And nobody's going to be listening, and that's okay. And that's actually a blessing in disguise that nobody's listening, because you have the ability to make mistakes then that on episode 50 or 150, you won't be making those mistakes. But you can really just take your phone out, hit record, and that's good enough to at least start. And I think a lot of people use "I'm too busy" as an excuse.
Look, I got work.
We're all busy.
Yeah,
we're all busy. But I'm pretty sure that if we did a deep dive into your schedule, we could free up a few hours every single day or week.
Yeah.
Where if you really wanted to start a podcast, YouTube channel, comedy career, whatever it happens to be, you could do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was at the expense of sleep. But I don't do that anymore. In the beginning, I would not sleep. It was just, hey, I have day work from 9 to 5, 9 to 6. Then I got family time. Then I got I wanted to other things that I was doing. So I was like, I'll just shave off a couple hours of sleep. But it catches up to you pretty quickly.
Definitely. I prioritize sleep so much now.
Yeah, it's so important. I can't nap though. Do you nap?
Really? I can. I just haven't napped in a long time.
Naps make me feel like I'm hungover for some reason.
Oh, that's weird.
Like my wife always, let's take a nap. I'm like, I have the time, and I am tired. We should nap, but I know that if I wake up in 30 minutes, I'm going to be miserable.
Oh.
My body just wants to do the whole 8. Like it doesn't. The short spurts of sleep just don't work. Like just keep working until you pass out, and then rest. Then that was always my mentality. But it's this is my first episode in like a month and a half. It started off because I was having construction issues at the building. It's just been a nightmare there. We're getting out of there soon. But then afterwards, it just kind of, I started realizing, like, man, I've been going nonstop for years. Every week there's one of these episodes, and now with the comedy store, it's weekly episodes with that. Plus, I still have the day job and family and dogs, and eventually you just burn yourself out completely. You know what I mean? So, what would be your advice for someone because that's LA. It's the go, go, go. You can't sleep. Sure. If you stop looking at your phone or if you stop posting stuff, you're going to become irrelevant. What would you tell somebody in that world? Like, do you really think that we need to be going full speed until we get to a certain level?
I think you got to prioritize the things that are important to you. And I think that far too often, the really important things, which are family or like when was the last time you called your mom, I think that those things unfortunately get put on the back burner. I will say, though, that like that idea of like hustling all the time, you can't keep that up for very long. Like there's going to be a point where you're going to burn out or you're going to drop the ball on something that's really important because you're not well rested enough. So I would say just put your energy into the things that are like the top priorities. And it's different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So my priorities are probably different from your priorities or different from anybody's priorities. But I think it's find what's important for you. A lot of people's priorities probably like paying rent or paying the mortgage.
Yeah, probably.
Spending time with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, spending time with your kids. Like, I think that those are important things. And I think that there's like some auxiliary things that you either get invited to or they're like time sucks that pull on your time, and you know that. And I think it goes back to what we were just saying. Like, it's important to be able to say no.
Yeah, I'm getting better at it, but I'm also, it's hard to judge what opportunities, because like I come from an old school like punk rock mentality, where we were playing in a band and in front of like 10 people.
Yeah.
You have to give it 110%, even if it's just 3 people. In order, because you never know who those 3 people are. One of those 3 people could own a record label and could sign your band. So you want to give the best performance every time. So for me, it's always about I gotta give it my all, no matter what. And it's hard. It's hard because here in LA especially, you get invited. Hey, you want to come to Malibu to this networking party? And you're like, no, I don't, but I should. I think I should. I don't know.
Using your example of like playing in front of 3 people at a punk rock show, if you're passionate about music, doesn't matter if there's 3 people there or 1,003 people there.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing. If the networking party doesn't really speak to you and you think it might be a better use of your energy to just kind of recoup, get to bed a little bit early or something, I think that it's the right call then to say no.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's lean into the things that really excite you.
Yeah.
Like if something feels like it's going to be taxing and you have the ability to say no and still keep your job or keep your relationship, like I'm sure you don't want to go to every wedding your wife invites you or gets invited to, but for the greater good of that relationship. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there's also that. You got to take that into consideration, because that's the other thing. A lot of people that are in the entertainment business, they're so focused in their careers or whatever it may be that friendships may go to the wayside. You know what I mean? Like your friends invited you to hang out, and you're like, I'm sorry, dude, I got to go do this. I got work. I got this interview. Sorry, can't make it. But now you're like sacrificing friendships or relationships with people too. So that's a little weird.
Yeah, and I just think it's a fine balance.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job of it, though.
I'm trying my best. So for you, how do you stay? I mean, every time I've seen you, you always have a smile on your face. You're in shape. You're cleaned up. You look good. You're professional. You're on the go. Is there ever times when you wake up and you're kind of not feeling it? And how do you get yourself out of that?
Well, first of all, it's a really kind thing to say, so thank you.
Of course.
I honestly, it sounds so cliche and cheesy, but like I look at every day as a new opportunity, a new opportunity to do so fortunate and so incredibly grateful that I'm basically doing my own thing. You know, I'm freelancing. I've got my YouTube channel. I've got Tungsten. I've got the podcast. I'm fortunate that I'm doing things that excite me every single day. So, sure, there's lots of days when I wake up and I'm thinking, man, it'd be great to stay in bed for an extra half hour, an extra hour and a half. But I really, truly see every day as an opportunity to, like, do something that excites me, make someone smile, create a piece of unique content that may, help somebody else out that's struggling with something. And I just look at that. Like, we have the choice every single day to focus on the bad things or to focus on the good things. Like, that's a choice we can make every single day. And I just don't want to be someone who focuses on the bad things that are happening. I'd rather focus on the light that's coming in, because in a room of darkness, just a little sliver of light is going to brighten up that entire room. And I'd rather look at that.
That's true. That's a good point. That is a good point. I mean, especially these days where, the world is tumultuous and there's stuff every time you turn on your I was going to say turn on your TV. No one does that anymore. When you turn on your phone and check your feed, it's just chaos everywhere you look, and it can get to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can get to you. So it's good to hear, to focus on the light and the dark, for sure.
And this is why I end every podcast episode asking the same question. What are 3 things you're grateful for today? Number 1, I do that in my day, every day. I start and end every day saying out loud 3 things I'm grateful for, because it centers you to go, wow, I've got a roof over my head. I've got my beautiful fiance, in the bed next to me. I've got my health. And it helps you go, if I've got those core things, today really can't be that bad. I've got the things that are important. My mom and dad are still together 48 years in. They love each other, and they set this beautiful example of love and companionship. It's like, man, if I've got all these things to be grateful for, why would I be upset? What good does it bring to be upset? And the reason I ask that at the end of every interview is because I want people to see someone who's wildly successful that is grateful for the same things that everybody has in their own life.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I was going to ask you about that, about your parents, because I wanted to see, like, where does this positivity come from? Like, this, it has to come from a foundation of good parenting. You know what I mean? Because in my experience, a lot of, like, where I hang out with the comedians that I hang out, they all come from broken homes. They're all messed up. So the reason they're so funny is because of their messed up parents. So I want to see, like, so if you're such a positive and happy, like, not happy, but just a positive outlook, that must come from a positive household, I think.
I just feel really fortunate that I just always had a great example with my mom and dad and my sister. Like, we all just got along, and I didn't even really. This is the funny thing growing up is, up until about a certain age, you just assume that what goes on in the 4 walls of your house is what goes on in the 4 walls of every house.
Right. Yeah.
And you don't realize till much later on, like, how different everyone's upbringing is.
Yeah.
So I just assumed, like, everyone's parents are together. And,
everyone's happy.
Everybody
good.
opens presents under the Christmas tree on Christmas morning, and dad comes home from work at 6 p.m. and food's on the table. Like,
yeah.
I just think that I am so grateful that my parents are just good people at their core. And then together, they're just incredible parents. But it wasn't like, it's not like we practice gratitude every day, but my parents would always help me through difficult times I was having, either with school, difficult times I was having maybe with a part-time job. I played sports, and I was hot-headed. I had a real temper.
I was trying to get to
big time.
There's got to be one.
Oh, there's all kinds of them.
Yeah.
I played baseball, and I would argue balls and strikes, and, like, I would get up in the umpire's face.
Very competitive.
I would get right up to the point where I would get kicked out, and then I would just end the argument. I would never really yell, but I would just very calmly be like, I know that you saw that play, and I saw that play, and boy, I don't know how you could call me out there. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
If we had a video of this, we would watch that back, and you would see that I was safe. But you called me out, and that's okay. That's your job. You can do that. and you have done that, and I can't change your mind here, but I just want you to know that you're wrong. And that's going to be the last thing I say about this.
Okay, all right. I can see that. I can see
some sort of a pro
but
wrestling
even that,
character.
it was very polite.
That's very demeaning, though. That's very. I'm talking
It is,
down to
yeah,
you, like
yeah.
you're the authority, and I'm going to walk right up to that line of like, if I say these things, I'll get kicked out of the game.
Yeah.
But if I say these other things, I just come across as a smart-ass kid.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, and I know you've probably picked up a bunch of cues from pro wrestling in terms of promo. Do you find yourself when you're out with normal folks? I don't want to call them normal folks. That sounds like a slur. When you're out with people that are not in the entertainment business or not in wrestling or any of that, do you find yourself forgetting that you're not sitting with like someone like that? Yeah,
like I'll throw out like an "it doesn't matter," and people will be like, "Okay," I'm like, "Oh, it's this thing in The Rock," and this probably happens to you all the time. I'll be like, I'll make a reference, they won't get it, and then I'll try to explain it, and they like. Here's a perfect example. I was explaining the Scott Steiner math promo to my fiance the other day.
That promo.
I can't remember why it came up, but I saw something on social media and it was referencing like the math, right? I think it was a meme talking about how like it was talking about how this was a 3-on-3 match or something. And there was like 133% chance of winning or something.
Okay.
And I was explaining to her like Scott Steiner and the math promo, and she just wasn't getting it. I'm like, all right, take out my phone. I go, here, take a look. And she's like, that's pretty funny actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I forget. Like the other night, I went to Josh Barnett's birthday party, and there was some people there, and there was a young lady, my friend's fiance, and we were talking, and I just started making jokes because I hang out with all these comedians.
Yeah.
So I started making jokes, and I started seeing her kind of like perplexed of like, that might have crossed the line or whatever it may be. And then I went into podcast mode and just started asking her questions. And I'm like, so when was the first time you did this? And but you've never done this. And have you tried this? And like,
ooh, that's good.
It went into like I was interviewing her. And even like at first she was very like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
Why are you talking to me like this? But eventually I think I broke her down to where she's, got what I was doing. But I have to tell myself often, like when I'm with my friends that are not in the business, I need to like pull back a little bit and just be normal. Just interact like a regular human being. You don't need to crack a joke there.
There's a big lesson to be learned in what you're saying, is that everybody's favorite topic to talk about is themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that too often people are trying to be interesting. And if you were to just flip that and start being more interested, I think that you would get a lot further in the conversations that you have.
Yeah.
I think that people are trying to make themselves the focus of attention, whether that's in an interview or whether that's just in a real life, conversation.
Yeah.
I think that so many people are just waiting for their turn to talk. When if you were genuinely interested in what the other person's saying, the conversation just ends up flowing so much better.
Yeah. I mean, at least I try to do that with, like, I try not to have notes because I just want to feel it out. See how it goes.
I like that. I definitely had a lot of moments when I was younger where everything I did revolved around wrestling catchphrases, and it was too much.
Yeah.
That was me in high school. All my friends watched wrestling, and if you didn't watch wrestling, I was going to jam it down your throat that wrestling was the greatest thing ever.
You haven't watched wrestling? Boy, I got to show you something.
Like, I remember I was on the student council in my high school. This was when Survivor was a big show on TV, and they were doing Survivor Day at school on Thursday, and everyone was going to dress as their favorite Survivor character. And I said, well, that doesn't seem like what if I don't watch Survivor? They're like, well, then you don't participate. I'm like, well, Thursday is SmackDown, right? Like, should this not be Survivor/SmackDown Thursday? And they were like, I guess. And I'm like, okay, well then, like, great. I'll come dressed as a wrestler then.
Nice. Yeah, that's a tough thing. I battle with it during interviews because I see it happening, and like it's happening right now. I'm talking about myself. So how do you stop yourself in an interview from referring to stuff that happens to you? Because it is, as long as it's not about trying to turn the interview on yourself, you're using it as an example to kind of further the conversation or to see their perspective on it. It's a tough battle because, like you said, you end up just talking about one person that I'm calling you out. I don't care. Come to the Comedy Store Wrestling Show and face me. But Wade Barrett's commentary, I don't know if you've noticed, but ever since he got on TV now for the main roster, everything is about him. Oh, when I was in the ring, That was
a good Wade Barrett.
No, I don't have the accent, but
that was good.
I was in the ring doing, with this guy, or when I was there in my career. Like I've noticed, almost all his commentary is about referring to himself and his time in the business. And
I would have to think everything in WWE is so produced that must be somebody saying, like, you're on the commentary team because you've been in the ring. And I think that we grew up, like, I didn't realize for many years that Jerry the King Lawler was a wrestler, like, and still wrestling.
To this day.
Yeah, absolutely, right? But, like, his style of commentary was just calling what he saw. And I think that they must be saying something to him where they're like, hey, you're not just our color commentator, but you're our expert. Okay. I would have to think that.
I would hope so.
Although I know Vince isn't in their ear anymore, so maybe they've got a little bit more room to play with.
Yeah, that's what I hear, that Michael Cole's having a career resurgence because he's, doing his own thing now.
Michael Cole is so incredibly underrated.
Yeah.
Michael Cole is so good at what he does, and I think that people just remember certain parts of his career when he was playing the Michael Cole heel character.
Yeah.
And they just attach everything that he does to that. But Michael Cole is, and I will put this out there, is my favorite wrestling commentator.
Wow. Okay.
And I know I'm going to get a lot of people that do not agree with that, and I'm okay with that. But Michael Cole gives every moment a very real sports feel to it.
Yeah.
Like, whereas JR is insanely talented, the voice of our childhood, but a lot of JR's commentary felt like wrestling commentary. And that's great if that's what you're into. But Michael Cole's commentary feels real. Like, it truly feels like the two people in the ring are actually having a fight against each other. Like, he calls it like it's a real combat sport, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put him as my number one, but I definitely always want him on the team. I want him there. I think if there's going to be a team, he's one of the major players. He has to be there.
Michael Cole is the Joe Buck of pro wrestling commentary.
Okay.
He could call any sport for any team in any city and make it sound like smooth and good.
And exciting.
Yeah. And I think that Michael Cole's the same, and in the same way also gets a lot of the same hate that Joe Buck gets.
Yeah. That's true. For me, I would have to say I'm a big fan, and I wish we had more of him. Mauro.
Oh, yeah.
I wish we could get more. I understand he's got, his personal issues that keep him from being on the road all the time, but man, is he good.
I will say that I love Mauro is incredible, and I actually watched him on TV in Toronto when I was on TV in Toronto. And Mauro's commentary of, like, boxing and MMA, I think it's actually superior to his wrestling commentary. He called the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight, and I didn't realize till like 3 rounds in that it was him.
I am today years old when I found out that information.
I didn't he calls it so very much like I was saying about Michael Cole, like just calls it right down the middle.
Yeah.
Whereas, you put it on a little bit for wrestling commentary.
Sure, yeah. Well, he puts it on a lot of it.
Yeah. His references are so incredible.
Crazy references, poetry that he just comes out of nowhere with. I just like watching, like, when they started showing those clips of him from the commentator's table.
Yeah.
He just genuinely looks like a little kid that's watching and freaking out the whole time.
But like the
and
way
I love that.
Like just obscure references to movies that he throws in. He's like, he bolted out of here faster than the DeLorean in the 1985 film Back to the Future with Marty McFly and Doc Brown.
That was a good Mauro. There you go.
And I'm like, oh yeah, he did speed out of here at 88 miles an hour.
Yeah. All right, let's go back a little bit. We got on this topic with how do you control in your head referring to your experiences too much?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we did go off on quite a tangent there.
Yeah, it's fine. We're wrestling fans. Deal with it.
I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule. And I think that if it's my podcast and I'm asking the questions and you are my guest, you should be speaking about 80% of the time. And I should be speaking about 20% of the time. And when I put that down on the editing timeline and I look at the audio, it's usually like little blip for me, long blip for guest, little blip for me, long blip for guest. So I think that I will reference things, but I don't usually like to get into story time. If I'm the guest on someone's podcast, then sure, of course, that's what I'm here for. But if it's my podcast and I've invited you to be a guest on my show, I want to hear about you.
Yeah.
And I think that especially when it's like a top tier star, I don't think you can be like, oh, that reminds me of a time I did this thing with my buddy Jimmy.
Right.
Because George Clooney's going to be staring at you being like, okay.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think that that's the general rule of thumb for me. And also I am genuinely interested in anybody that I'm speaking with. And I might throw in just for a little bit of color of like, oh, I know exactly what you mean because this thing happened to me. And then it's just right back to their story. That's usually it for me.
Okay. Now, let's get some quick fire questions.
And you got me in trouble last time we did this.
Oh yeah, right. Sorry, guys.
With who are your top 5 wrestlers right now? And I'm like, I should have prefaced that by going, well, nobody's going to agree with most of these.
Yeah. Well, either you still get shit from people. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
But in a way, that trouble, isn't it just more...
That was very interesting.
Clicks, more...
yeah, like people were like...
it out there.
How could you think Randy Orton's... How could you think Randy Orton's a top 5 wrestler right now? I was like... What?
How do you not?
And then people were like, I think you forgot The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm like, the question was current wrestlers who are currently active.
Well, rumors are Stone Cold's getting another match, so
love it.
Maybe Stone Cold's an active wrestler.
Sure. I guess technically The Rock's an active wrestler.
I mean, when was his last in-ring?
I think it was against Eric Rowan, WrestleMania 33? 3, 4. The 6-second match.
I remember that match. Yeah, but that wouldn't even.
That's his match.
I wouldn't even count that. Really.
No.
I mean, Stone Cold had more of a match than that. So.
Oh hell yeah.
So.
Oh hell yeah.
Oh hell yeah. Yeah.
What? What?
All right. So the questions I want. Who was your very first interview?
Very first of all interviews. So my very first celebrity interview was Chingy, the rapper Chingy.
I've never heard of Chingy.
Right there. I like the way you do that right there. Right there.
Oh, that guy. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
And I had just got hired to work at MTV2 Canada. It was in Vancouver. And it was my second day of work. And they were like, you're going to spend the day with Chingy. You're going to follow him around. Like, we're going to pick him up from the airport. You're going to follow him around all day to it was an autograph signing, some interviews. He went to some clothing store, and then we drove him back to the airport, a concert, and then back to the airport. So that was my very first interview.
And you at what point did you interview him though? Throughout that?
Yes, we did a little bit of stuff in the car. Although I have to be honest, the plan was to get him in the car. He was giving us little bites of all right, we're off to this place now. We're off to this place. He was so exhausted because he was on a press tour for his album that we would get into the back of the car. Some, Suburban or Yukon or whatever it was, and he just fell asleep every time.
Oh, man.
He was so exhausted.
Yeah.
So there was a point where we actually had a 10-minute block of time where we did an interview together. And I thought it was awesome, and I remember watching it back a few months later and going, yeah, that wasn't so good. And I think there's a lesson there, and the lesson is if you're not constantly getting better, then it goes without saying that you're getting worse. But if you're not looking back at your stuff from 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and kind of just cringing a little of ooh, could have said that better. Yeah. Then you're not headed in the right direction.
Yeah. I cringe at most of my content.
And I think that's a good thing. And I think people are afraid to watch back their stuff.
Yeah.
I think they're afraid to see themselves on camera. That whole voicemail thing of hearing your voice. I think people are scared of that. And a really big tip I would give content creators is you have to get used to that. And it's going to take a long time. It's going to take years of watching your stuff, but you have to watch it because you're never going to be able to get better otherwise.
Yeah. I have to thank my my years of brain damage from wrestling and jumping off stages that I can disconnect whenever I'm editing. And like, to me, it's two other people.
It's good.
Someone else there interviewing the guest. And I can get through the editing and whatnot because I can't stand my own voice, and I chose to be a singer in a band and to interview people and do podcasting. So it's a tough gig. But anyway, all right. So that was your first guest. Who was your? So that Chingy one was kind of an experience, right? Because you had a whole day lined up. Was there another interview that was like that was kind of the most difficult for you?
Early on, or just in general? In
general, like, I'll give you a quick, not to make it about me, but just a quick one. Like, I went to go interview Lethal, DJ Lethal from Limp Bizkit, and it became a 12-hour adventure.
Oh, wow.
I had to go and get in his car. We drove around. He showed me where he was born. Like, all these.
Oh, man.
You know, like, it was just. I got maybe like 30 minutes of usable content.
I did an interview with Scott Stapp, lead singer of Creed.
Wait, when? Because that's
2009.
Was this when he was riding around a bicycle with a backpack full of paperwork, saying that he knew that the Pentagon was?
It might have been around that time
when he was like off the hinges.
It was just, he was great, and okay. I mean, like everybody else, I was a big Creed fan. You know, all those songs.
I don't know if anybody watching this podcast is part of that Creed crew.
Everybody watching this podcast knows the words to "Arms Wide Open."
That's true.
And "My Sacrifice" and "Higher."
My sacrifice.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I interviewed him at that time, and we had, I think we had 10 or 12 minutes to do the interview. And then the interview ended, and he just wanted to, like, just chat. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, we're hanging out with Scott Stapp. And then it got to a point where it's like the conversation just wouldn't end. And I kept, like, looking at my watch and being like, we gotta go. Like, I gotta go, like, on set, and, like, we're live on TV this evening. And I remember trying to, like, end the conversation, be like, hey, man, just thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate you. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, but anyway, by the way. I'd be like, dude, thank you again for everything. This was so cool, man. I grew up listening to your music, and here we are. Like, thank you, man. And he's like, yeah. But anyway, so back to that thing. And I was like, oof. So eventually I had to be like, Scott, I'm so sorry. Like, we got to go.
Yeah.
So I guess the interview was all great, and hanging with him was awesome. I'd love to have him back on the show now. But that was such an interesting, weird kind of experience.
Trying to back out of a conversation. That is a tough one.
I've never had it where someone's like, no, please don't go.
Yeesh. Yeah, I've had a few of those. That's a tough. People don't get the clue. Or when you have a friend that comes over and it's like, hey, man.
Oh, well, those happen.
I'm going to bed. You can stay here and watch TV if you'd like. I'm going to sleep.
I wonder if you would agree with this, that so often, especially when an artist is promoting something or an actor is promoting their film, interviews can feel very transactional, where they're coming onto the show to talk about their new album, their new tour, their new book, whatever it happens to be. And it's very transactional of, like, very little small talk before, hit record, interview's great, thank you so much. Interview ends, and they go, okay, well, cool, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and especially when you're on a press tour, you're doing 100 of those.
Yeah.
I always love when it actually feels like you hit it off with that person, and you built some rapport, and, like, you hit stop, like we're going to do. We'll have a beer and hang out here, unless you got to go. Do you have to go?
No.
Please don't go.
No, I'm good. Tell me more. No, I'm just
Yeah, and I always love when it is not a transactional experience.
Yeah, to me, I like that too. There's just there's a handful that I've had where planning an escape route, like figuring out how do I get out of this.
Yeah.
Texting my wife, like, I'm sorry, but I don't know when I'm leaving. I don't know what to tell you. Those are tough. Those are tough. Okay. First interview was Chingy. Most difficult was, that wasn't a difficult interview.
No, that you were asking about, like, the adventure that it would go on.
Yeah. Okay, then what was the most difficult interview? Like, who was the person that just gave you nothing? There was just, like, one, yep, nope. Like, who was it that used to do, there's a football, Marshawn Lynch?
Yeah, he's just here so he won't get fined.
Yeah. So who would be the most difficult for you?
I feel fortunate in saying I haven't really had any of those.
Okay.
And I think that most of the time they're in press mode. They know that they have a microphone. There's a camera on them. So I haven't had any terrible ones. But I had just a kind of a weird one with Christoph Waltz, the bad guy from Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah.
I interviewed him
actor.
for Spectre. We were in Mexico City. I interviewed him for Spectre, and he was the villain in Spectre. And I just truly think he's such a great actor that he kind of embodies the character that he's playing.
Okay. Method acting?
Maybe. Just like, it was just weird because I've interviewed him a few times, and both were on complete other ends of the spectrum. So I interviewed him for Spectre, and I walk in, and he's standing there with his hands behind his back.
Oh, God.
And there's 2 chairs, and he's like, after you. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know which chair is mine. And he's like, oh. Okay, so I sit down, and I asked him a question that I thought was a really interesting question that no villain in a movie, no bad guy, believes that they're a bad guy. They justify their actions, which is why they do it. So I said, if someone were to ask you to describe your character, how would you describe him? And I'm expecting him to go, well, he's a father of 2. I don't know this. I don't know his actual Spectre character. He's a father of 2. He used to work for this factory. He loves his wife very much. She left him. I was expecting him to justify all of his actions. And he goes, that's not my job to define my character. That's your job. I'm not going to do your job for you. Oof. And I went, oof. Okay. Went on to the next question, also very short response, and I went, oh. And then we kind of ended it a little bit early. Then I saw him a few years later for the movie Alita Battle Angel. And in that movie, he plays a fatherly character to the younger character in the film, this younger female character. I went in for that interview, and it was a completely different human. He was so warm and welcoming, and everything I said was absolutely hilarious to him. And it was just so weird that I truly feel like he embodies that character. Or was just having a terrible day.
He could have been having a bad
Mexico.
day. Yeah, it could have been. I mean, how do you have a bad day in Mexico as a celebrity actor?
We drank a lot of tequila that night. Yeah.
Maybe that's how he acts when he's drunk.
And that interview for Alita Battle Angel was in New Zealand, and the night before we all went out to a big dinner in a room about this size. There were a bunch of tables, and he did a toast for everybody, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in New Zealand, and Christoph Waltz is doing a toast? This is unbelievable.
Do you keep a journal of these moments?
I really should. I don't.
My wife has been pushing me to do that, and I started it. I started it because like you mentioned earlier, the book thing. That's good content for a book to have. All those moments, but I just forget sometimes. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah,
with it,
I've been using the term core memory a lot.
Okay,
and I think that life is so fleeting, right? Moments happen. Moments are so fleeting that I've been taking time out when there's a very special moment and just kind of digesting that moment. The sights, the sounds, the smells, perhaps the tastes. If there's something you can touch, and been taking them in. I did that last night actually at the premiere for Glass Onion. That was so cool. I just took a moment to just kind of look around and go, I'm taking a mental image of this that I'm going to be able to go back to in a year or 2 or 10.
Interesting. Yeah, you might want to, take a page out of Jericho's book, make a list.
That's a good idea. Yeah, he makes a list of all his matches too.
So
you just made the list.
Was that? Do you think that's what the list was? In his the gimmick?
No, he didn't. He didn't create it.
No, I know, but he had a list of all his matches, right?
Yeah.
So, do you think that's the inspiration? That list of matches was the inspiration for...
Have you heard the story? Jimmy Jacobs wrote the list when he was working for WWE.
Okay.
Jimmy Jacobs said, I want to create this part of your character where you're so petty that you create a list of these terrible things that people have done for you. Or done to you.
Okay.
That's Jimmy Jacobs was the brains behind it, and Jericho would tell you that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right, okay. That's good. Okay, so another question, quick.
Yeah, I gotta stop going off on these tangents.
Yeah, right. No, and this place is starting to get a little crazy too, so we might have to wrap soon. So that was Christoph Waltz's Spectre interview. Was tough. Which interview have you had? That moment where you mentioned you like it when you hit it off, who was like the most human? Because I've met a lot of, I mean, as have you, met a lot of these celebrities, and not that they're fake, but they just seem like they're in a zone. Like if they're doing interviews, they're in that interview moment, like answering these questions. They already have pre-programmed answers. Which person that you've interviewed or been with became the most, I guess, human afterwards?
It's really The Rock.
Really?
Like, The Rock's everything you would want him to be. Like, they always say you shouldn't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
But if your hero happens to be Dwayne Johnson, like, do whatever you can to try to meet him.
Yeah. I met him once. We'll tell you that story after we get off the air.
No, you can tell me that story. I interviewed him last month for Black Adam. And I was at the hotel where we were going to be doing the interviews the night before. I was meeting up with my buddies. They were staying at that hotel, the SLS Hotel. And I walked into the lobby. I see my buddy Jake. And he's one of the best interviewers on the planet. His name's Jake Hamilton. His YouTube channel is Jake's Takes. Okay. You should look him up. He's so good. He's based in Chicago. And I'm standing there with him, and he goes, if we stand here for like a few more minutes, The Rock's going to be walking back through this area to go back into his interview room. I'm like, oh, cool. And he goes, yeah, his security guy's there, so like they're getting ready. So I'm like, oh, cool. Let's just stand here and see Dwayne Johnson. I haven't seen him in person in 4 years.
Okay.
He walks by. He sees us. He goes, hey, Jake, Chris, how you guys been? I'm like, what? Like, no cameras around. Yeah, and he remembered our names. Then he goes, hey, you still living in Miami? And I'm like, nice. No, I live out here now. Dude, I'm so proud of you. That's great, man. That's really good. This is the place for you. And then I went in the next day, did the interview with him. And it's a big hug when you walk in. He's so present. He listens to your questions. He's so good at going, that's a really good question, man. And then the interview ended. We sat and chatted for a little bit longer. And then I left, and I was like, man, that was really good. I feel like I truly hung out with not someone who I was just asking questions and they were answering them. Like, I truly felt like we were friends. We're not friends. I'm not friends with The Rock. And then afterwards, I was like, man, I forgot to take a photo of it with him. That sucks. And then I saw him duck out about half an hour later to go to the bathroom. And as he was finally working his way back into the room we were standing in, I was like, would you mind if we took a photo? And he's like, of course. I'm like, can we raise the people's eyebrows? He's like, yeah, hell yeah, you going to raise the eyebrow? So I got a picture where we're both raising the eyebrows. Nice. So he's kind, funny, charismatic, but he has this amazing star quality where he makes the moment about you. So if you were to sit down wearing this shirt, he'd be like, oh, what a shirt. Oh, Austin, that is such a good shirt. I love that, man. What's your favorite Stone Cold match? Like, he would break right into, like, this is your moment now. And I love that.
I guess because when you get to the point that he's at, where he's had so many of his own moments, you give back.
The thing is, he understands that this is a moment he's creating. But the fact that he has that self-awareness is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
He always says, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Yeah.
And he knows how those little moments can go such a long way. Because we've all heard those stories of, like, name any celebrity, and I'm sure you know a buddy who goes, that guy's a dick. Maybe that guy was just having a bad day, or you caught him in a bad 3-second part of his day, and now you're going to remember that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that The Rock wants to make sure that if you ever meet him, you're going to leave there going, that was an amazing moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, and then finally, like I said, I'm going to tell you that Rock story later. But
can't wait.
Last question is, who haven't you interviewed that you really want to?
There's a lot. There's still a
give me 3.
Vince McMahon was at the top of that list.
Oh.
And then Pat McAfee did Vince's first interview in 18 years.
Yeah.
And I think that Pat crushed it.
Yeah, he did.
I would still love to do an interview with Vince McMahon. I don't think that's ever going to happen now.
Oh, yeah, I don't think anybody's going to see him until like near the end or whatever, or if there's some kind of project like a biography or maybe even the Hall of Fame. Like I think that's the next time we'll see him. You know?
It's certainly not happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
I'd love an interview with Tom Brady. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Tom Brady. I've never been a Patriots fan. I'm not a Buccaneers fan, but I am a Tom Brady fan. And for the fact that he's 45 doing everything that he's doing is unbelievable.
Okay.
And I would love a longer conversation with Oprah. I've interviewed her once on a red carpet for the movie Precious.
Okay.
It was like 12 years ago. I would love a longer interview with Oprah because I'm truly inspired by her whole story of like, she was not willing to take no for an answer. And she had a vision in her mind of who she wanted to be and what she wanted to do. And she made it happen.
Yeah. Okay. Oprah. All right.
Stone Cold Steve Austin if I can't get Vince McMahon.
Have you talked to Stone Cold ever?
Briefly. I interviewed him for a movie he was promoting, again, like 10 years ago. Man, skee ball's loud.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's our cue to wrap up this interview.
Have you talked to Austin?
I have not. I met him briefly at El Segundo Brewing when he was doing his beer thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to have Austin on the
Same.
show. You know, quick story of Tom Brady. My friends are mad at him right now. I have a couple military friends that are upset at him because he came out and said that that football is like war, and my buddy's like, no. not even close. And apparently he got backlash because he came back out and said he apologized. Like, I'm sorry,
wow.
I shouldn't have said that.
That was on his podcast, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was like, I shouldn't have said that.
I listen to his podcast every week. Let's go.
Yeah, like, I don't know if it's the same that, going to football season over going, to war overseas. I don't know. I thought it was funny. My friends are like, no, dude.
No.
Anyway, Chris, thank you so much. We'll do another one of these when I have a proper studio.
Let's do
it. Everything. We're not playing skee ball back here. For anybody that's watching and listening that hasn't seen Chris's shows, you have to. I mean, there's a handful of interviewers that I watch to learn, and you are one of them.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Sean Evans, Hot Ones. Dude is
so good.
I don't get it. I don't get how his brain works, how he can remember all of that while dying with hot sauce. Don't know how he does it.
That guy is not human.
Yeah, I mean, those you and Sean are the ones that I watch the most.
Oh, wow.
I used to watch Joe Rogan, but he not anymore. He's still in my good, I still love Rogan, but like I stopped. His interviews are not really interviews anymore. It's just conversations, I think, at this point.
They always have been.
Yeah, but he used to, I don't know. I feel like there was a change when he went to Texas in what he was asking. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But either way, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chris, where do they find you on socials?
So it's at Chris Van Vliet, and wherever you're listening to this, you can find my podcast, Insight with Chris Van Vliet, and it'd be awesome if you subscribe to my YouTube channels. And I mean, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast here, what are you waiting for?
Please?
Right?
Yeah, I'm subscribed to both of his channels,
Wow.
Chris Van Vliet and CVV Clips.
Thank you.
So make sure you get that. But dude, thanks again.
Bro,
Appreciate you. Let's go drink some beers.
So we'll cheers the mics until then.
Yes.